بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Okay, so let's start. So just to recap what we've covered so far, we discussed the preparations for war, the fact that the Quraysh, they were camping nearby, the Shura, the consultation the Prophet ﷺ did with the Sahaba of repelling them while they stay in Medina. So this was the opinion of the Prophet ﷺ, that his desire was to protect Medina by remaining in Medina and not to leave Medina. However, the younger companions, they were overzealous, and they wanted to meet the people of Makkah in open battlefield. So the Prophet ﷺ, he put on his armor, and while he was putting on his armor, the older Sahaba, the more senior Sahaba, they rebuked the younger Sahaba and told them that this was the desire of the Prophet ﷺ. Why did you insist to fight the people of Makkah while leaving Medina? So Hamza radiallahu anh, he went back to the Prophet ﷺ and told the Prophet ﷺ that, look, we're ready to defend Medina by staying in Medina, by remaining in Medina. So the Prophet said it doesn't behoove a prophet that once he puts on his armor for a specific purpose, that he stays where he is. Meaning that once the armor is on and the shura has been made, now we have to go outside and defend Medina. So this was the mashwara, this was the consultation. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ stuck with this. Now, as Badr, we don't have the whole battle in order. We don't have the entire battle in order. Rather, we have small pieces of the puzzles, all narrated by various Sahaba. And the problem comes with filling in the gaps and figuring out what happened in what order. Every Sahabi, every companion is telling their progeny one or two events in Uhud. And this was especially the case with Uhud, because it was very chaotic. Uhud was chaotic, and because overall the Muslims, they did suffer a temporary loss. If we read 5 different Seerah books, you're going to get 5 different chronological events of the battle. So in these, what we're going to be covering today is just one reconstruction. There might be slight variations. It's a matter of just connecting the dots and inferring what exactly happened in between. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Our responsibility is just to try to get a snapshot of what exactly transpired on the battlefield. So what appears to be the case is that around the 13th of Shawwal, the Quraysh, they were approaching Medina. So they were marching 3,000 strong all the way from Makkah to Medina. And this was on the 13th of Shawwal. The 13th is a Thursday. The 14th is a Friday. And the actual battle, it took place on the morning of Saturday. This is according to Ibn Ishaq, who is one of the primary authorities when it comes to Seerah. So the theory is that by the 13th, the Quraysh and the Muslims, they are within scouting distance of one another. Right? So both armies, they're within scouting distance. By the 14th, the Prophet ﷺ, he goes to Uhud. And this is why as soon as he did Shura, as soon as he consulted with the Sahaba, prayed Jummah. If you recall last week, I mentioned that they offered their Jummah, and the Prophet ﷺ, he sought consultation from the Sahaba. After seeking consultation, putting the armor and everything on, he makes his way to Uhud. He makes his way to Uhud with the entire army. And according to a number of reports, the Prophet ﷺ made his way very secretly, surreptitiously. He made his way to Uhud. He asked for a guide to take him through the date palms and not the main highway. They went through the garden groves, the back alleyway. Now, why? Because that would give their location away too early. Now, the whole thing, the idea is that they don't want to give out their location because you have scouts nearby. You have the Qurashi scouts nearby. You don't want to give away your location. So, and the Prophet of Allah wanted to get to Uhud first so they can choose where they are going to camp, right? They want to get a better assessment of the battlefield. What is the best positioning? This is why the Prophet ﷺ wanted to get to Uhud first, but he wanted to take the back alleyway because if he had taken the main highway, they were within scouting distance. It was possible that the scouts, they would return back with information that Muhammad ﷺ is coming through the main highway, and perhaps everything would be different. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had this idea in mind that we need to get there first. It's narrated that as they were walking through the date palms, one of the hypocrites, who was a blind man, right, he hears the commotion. He hears commotion that people are walking through his land. So he asks that, who is this? Is this Muhammad and his companions? Is this Muhammad and his companions? So he starts throwing pebbles and rocks towards the Sahaba to get rid of them. So he starts throwing. This is a blind man, and he asks that, is this Muhammad and his companions? And just to get rid of them, he starts throwing pebbles and rocks towards the Sahaba. And he says to them that, I don't allow you to come onto my land. Now, one of the Sahaba wanted to raise his sword to get rid of him. But the Prophet ﷺ said that, Da'uhu a'mal qalb wa a'mal basar, that leave him. He's blind from his heart. He's blind from his heart. Just let him be. This person is blind in his heart, and he's blind in his eyes as well. So now, why are they on this route? It's clearly because the Quraysh, they're close by, and the Prophet ﷺ wanted to choose the location, that he wanted to choose where he's going to be and where he's going to station his army. So the Prophet ﷺ, he arrived by afternoon, and the Prophet of Allah and the Sahaba, they arrived at Uhud in the afternoon. So it's literally, it's a half-hour walk by car. Nowadays, it's about 3 minutes. So the Prophet ﷺ arrives on Uhud, and the Quraysh, by their scouts, know the Muslims are there, and they too make their way towards Uhud. So by the night of the 14th, both armies are at Uhud, and they're now camping over there. The Prophet ﷺ, he begins organizing the army and analyzing their skills. So the Prophet of Allah is organizing the army, analyzing their skills, tries to understand their strengths and weaknesses. So he rejected, before we get into this, he rejected around a dozen or so Sahaba because they were too young. Anyone under 15 was immediately sent back. So of those who were sent back was Abdullah ibn Umar. How old was Abdullah ibn Umar when the Prophet ﷺ passed away? So when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Abdullah bin Umar was approximately 21 years old, right? So that's about 8 years. So Abdullah bin Umar was probably 14 at the time. So during the Battle of Uhud, the son of Umar bin Khattab was approximately 14, give or take. And the Prophet of Allah sent him back because he was considered too young to participate with the Muslims on the battlefield. Another Sahabi, who was sent back was none other than the famous compiler of the Quran, or one of the responsible Sahaba, who was at the forefront and was in the committee of when the Quran was being compiled. That was Zayd bin Thabit, radiallahu anh, very famous name. So Zayd bin Thabit, he's the famous compiler of the Quran, and Zayd bin Thabit also was known as A'lam bil Fara'id. He was the one who was proficient in the knowledge of fara'id and inheritance. Another Sahabi who was sent back was Usama bin Zayd bin Haritha. Usama bin Zayd bin Haritha, the son of Zayd bin Haritha, the adoptive son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his son's name was Usama, the same Usama that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a commander in the Battle of Mu'tah. In the Battle of Mu'tah, the Prophet ﷺ made him a commander, and he was a very young age at that time. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anh was sent back. Zayd ibn Arqam. These are the who's who of Sahaba that were sent back, and they were prevented from participating in the Battle of Uhud due to their tender age. Usama bin Zayd bin Haritha, he was approximately 11, 12 at this time. He was 17 in the Battle of Mu'tah, and he's trying to sneak into the army. Subhanallah. Nowadays, this child, nowadays 11, 12 years old, we consider them kids. Where are our 11-year-old kids, and what are they doing now? Nowadays, 11-year-old kids, most likely they're playing Fortnite, they're gaming at home. They're doing things to just pass the time. But this is an 11, 12-year-old child, Usama bin Zayd, who's trying to sneak into the army to participate in the Battle of Uhud. So a number of these young men, they argued their way to remain, and two of them succeeded. One was Rafi bin Khadij. He was 14. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him that, how old are you? 14? Okay, you go back. But some of his relatives begged and said, Ya Rasulullah, he is an expert archer. He's an expert archer. So the Prophet ﷺ let him stay. That, okay, you're an expert archer, you can contribute something. So he let him stay. When he remained, Samura ibn Jundub stands up and says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm stronger than Rafi, and I've beaten him in wrestling a number of times. So it's not fair that you let him stay and you tell me to go. So according to one book, he even jumped on Rafi bin Khadij. He jumped on Rafi bin Khadij to show his strength. That, look, I can take him down. So the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed him to stay as well. Again, these are the who's who of Sahaba: Samura bin Jundub, Rafi bin Khadij. These are very famous companions. Now compare these young men who are, they're about to begin their life. They're young men. They have everything in front of them. They're just full of iman. Compare them to Abdullah bin Ubay and the hypocrites who just surreptitiously they left the army in a sneaky fashion. So these are young men. They're full of iman. Their hearts are brimming with faith, and they're ready to die for Islam. They're ready to die for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were Abdullah bin Ubay and the hypocrites. They just ran off, and they were experienced in battle. Yet they still went back. Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul and all of the hypocrites that left the army. I mentioned it last week that they left the army. They all went back. Now compare this to the bravery that these young lads are showing. Compare this to the bravery these young Sahaba who are of tender age, they are displaying. Iman and the courage of these young men, it's just astounding when you think about it. That they have so much to live for. I mean, you and I, we would say something like, they have so much to live for. Why are they fighting? Why are they going out in battle? But it was their iman that propelled them to do whatever they did. Ibn Ishaq says that the Prophet ﷺ placed the army such that the army was facing Medina. So the army was facing Medina, and their backs were to Uhud. On their left was a small mountain called Jabal Ainain. That mountain now is called Jabal Ruma, which translates to the mountain of the archers. And this is called the mountain of the archers because this is where the Prophet ﷺ stationed the contingent of archers at the base of the mountain to protect that vulnerable pass, that vulnerable side. So the Prophet ﷺ camped at a place, in such a place where they were surrounded from three sides. So the Prophet ﷺ, so if this was the army, the army was facing Medina straight, and these three sides were protected. So the army was in front of them, and they were protected from three sides. So they now only have to defend what is staring at them in the front. So there was only one open side. Jabal Ainain, Jabal Ruma, it's smack in the middle. So he placed 50 expert archers there, completely sealing off that area, because it's in a vulnerable spot. The area is in a vulnerable spot, and the Prophet of Allah realized this. So all that's left is a small area of 300 meters. So between the Prophet ﷺ's army and the army of Makkah, there's 300 meters. And that will be the offensive. This is where they're going to launch an offensive. The whole beauty over here, it's just amazing when you think about it. The whole beauty here is that they're outnumbered 4-1. Remember, the Muslims, they're 700. The Makkans, they are 3,000. So you have, what is that, like 4-1, 4.2 to 1. So the Prophet of Allah, he's maximizing the space such that their extra surplus, the extra surplus of the people of Makkah, becomes completely meaningless, because 4-1 on paper, it's impossible. 4 men against one man, it's impossible to win against 4 men when you're fighting against them. So what the Prophet of Allah is doing is that he's maximizing the army. So all that can happen is 300 meters of soldiers coming at you at one time. That's the only thing that can happen. So you have 300 meters of soldiers in front of you, and that's the only time they can launch an offensive. You can't have 3,000 people squeezing in 300 meters. It's impossible. So 3,000 soldiers they have to squeeze in. That's not possible. So the Muslims would not be surrounded. Remember, they were protected from three sides, and the vulnerable side, the Prophet of Allah stationed the archers over there. So the Muslims would not be surrounded. It would just be men-to-men fighting. So out of Uhud, the most authentic report is the advice the Prophet ﷺ gave to the archers. And this shows the Prophet ﷺ knew there's only one strategic weakness in the entire link, and that is that stretch of land that was protected by the archers. The other three are protected by the mountains. The Muslims, they're surrounded by mountains, they're protected. And the 300-meter stretch in front of the army will be taken care of by the soldiers. So he told the archers, the Prophet ﷺ told the archers, that keep the Meccan cavalry away from us with your arrows. Don't let them come against us from the rear. Do not let them come against us from the rear. Because if our vanguard is in the front, if our army is in the front, and the army circles around us, then we're going to be vulnerable. This is a very vulnerable position to be in. This is called outflanking. When you're outflanked and there is cavalry attacking you from all sides, then armies lose. This was something that Khalid bin Walid, I believe I mentioned it in one of my Seerah programs, that Khalid bin Walid, radiallahu anh, he was an expert in doing this. It's called the crab formation. Where the army, it circles around something like this, like a crab. So Khalid bin Walid was an expert in utilizing this. All of the battles he fought in, these battles were all won by Khalid bin Walid. But the Prophet ﷺ told the archers that, look, keep the Meccan cavalry away from us with your arrows, and don't let them come against us from the rear. Whether the battle goes in our favor or against us, you have to do your job and stay where you are. Whatever happens, keep to your places so that we cannot be attacked from your direction, meaning from the back. Even if you see us being slain, or booty is being taken, the spoils of war are being taken, keep to your position. Stay and remain in your position. Protect us with your arrows against the horses. This is another narration. So the Prophet ﷺ is stressing to these 50 archers, this small contingent of archers, that you have to stay here no matter what. Do not let the people of Makkah outflank us and take us from behind by surprise. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said that even if you see the birds eating our bodies, do not leave your places until I call for you, until I send for you. In another narration, make sure the enemy does not surprise us from behind, regardless if we are winners or losers. Stay there until I call you. So all of these narrations, when you combine them, it's just the Prophet ﷺ at different intervals telling the Sahaba that you need to ensure that you remain here no matter what. These narrations, they're all reported in Bukhari and Muslim with authentic chains. Therefore, we can see the Prophet ﷺ knew how vital and important the archers were that were stationed at the base of the mountain. Now, on the morning of the 15th, which is a Saturday, the Prophet ﷺ is wanting to encourage the Sahaba for battle. And what better motivation can there be than Allah and His Messenger? So he took out his sword. He took out a sword and says, who will take this sword from me and fight? So the Prophet ﷺ has a sword in his hand, and he's asking the Sahaba. Imagine the Sahaba. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh is there. Umar radiallahu anh is there. Uthman is there. Ali is there. You have the great Sahaba, great companions all there. And the Prophet says, who is going to take the sword from me and fight? Immediately, everyone says, I will. The first person to say that was Zubair ibn al-Awwam. Who was Zubair ibn al-Awwam? Zubair ibn al-Awwam. Who was he? Anyone? If you know who he is and how he was related to the Prophet ﷺ, you can write it on the chat. So Zubair ibn Awwam, he was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. Zubair bin Awwam was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, the son of who? Safiya, the son of Safiya, the aunt of the Prophet ﷺ. So Zubair radiallahu anh was the maternal cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, first cousin of the Prophet of Allah. The Prophet then asked that who will give the sword the right it is owed? Who will give the sword the right it is owed? So Abu Dujana said that, and what is the right of the sword? What is the haqq of this sword? The Prophet said that you fight the enemy with it until it breaks. And Abu Dujana said, I will take it with that haqq. I will take it with that right. And Abu Dujana, this man, was a fearsome combatant. He was a fearsome warrior. He was what you would call a fighting machine. And he would put on, during battle, he would put on a special turban. And when he put this special turban on, this turban was known as the turban of death. So this was called the turban of death. So he put on the turban and he walked up and down the rows with his sword unsheathed for the Quraysh to see. And he was walking with, a swaggering gait, with pride. So at this, the Prophet ﷺ said that this type of walking, Allah despises it except at such a time and at such a place, meaning that this is the time and this is the place where you can show swagger and when you can show pride, because you're trying to psych out the opposition. Right? So if those who watch UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, so they'll understand this, that at the beginning you have the fighters always peacocking and trying to psych the other opponent out. So they'll walk they'll walk with a lot of swagger and arrogance. So this is what Abu Dujana radiallahu anh, he was doing. And at that type, in these kind of circumstances, it is permissible. Otherwise, in normal circumstances, this type of gait is disliked and abhorred by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to scare the opposition. So this is the whole purpose behind it, that you want to scare the opposition. And this shows us it's common sense. The purpose of such a walk and this turban is to instill the right spirit into the Sahaba. Now, the first thing the Quraysh, they tried to do, psychological warfare over here. So the first thing the Quraysh tried to do was separate the Ansar and the Muhajirun. So first Abu Sufyan. Now Abu Sufyan is a politician, so he sent a messenger, and he comes within shouting distance and says that I've been sent by Abu Sufyan. I've been sent by Abu Sufyan, and he's saying that, "O people of Medina," Abu Sufyan has sent a messenger, that, "O people of Medina, leave us to our cousins. We have nothing against you, and we have no desire to fight you. So leave us to our cousins, and we're not going to do anything to you." So the Ansar, obviously the Ansar, they're the bulk of the army. The Ansar make up the majority of the army. If the Ansar leave, 700 will go down to nothing. If the Ansar leave, then 700 will go down to nothing, because the bulk of the army is Ansar. So the Ansar, when they heard this, they become furious, and they responded back with insults. And again, in such a situation and in such a time, it's permitted to use harsh language, and it's not appropriate except at such a time. So on the battlefield, you have to show harshness, you have to show roughness that's meant for fighting. So they say, how dare you accuse us of wanting to leave the Prophet ﷺ? So then a man says, from the Qurashi side, from the Quraysh, a man says, leave this to me. Now, who was this man? This man was Abd Amr ibn Sayfi. Abd Amr ibn Sayfi. He was known as Abu Amir al-Rahib, the monk. Rahib means monk. So he was one of the leaders of the Aus. This man was one of the leaders of the Aus before the immigration of the Prophet ﷺ to Medina. He was on the level of Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, the hypocrite. But he didn't want to accept Islam. Therefore, before Badr, he abandoned Medina. He left Medina and he went to Mecca. So he took a group of his fellow Aus tribesmen who were of similar mindset, and they settled in Medina. So he says to Abu Sufyan, who is the commander, that leave this to me, for my people have always respected and honored me, and you will see the power I have over them. So Abu Amir al-Rahib went out to the Ansar and said that, "O my people of Aus, this is me, Abu Amir." Before he continued, the Ansar said that, "May Allah Azza wa Jal curse you and give you no pleasure. You are not Abu Amir al-Rahib. You are not the monk. You are Abu Amir al-Fasiq. You're Abu Amir al-Fasiq, that you're a wrongdoer, you're a hypocrite, you're a sinner." And why? Why did they call him this? Because he fled his own people, because he hated and despised the Prophet ﷺ. So they said, the Sahaba said that, "Don't tell us you're a monk, you're an evil, you're a wretched person." So Abu Amir, he was so shocked, he couldn't open his mouth to continue. He was so shocked at this response that he just left. And he returned to Abu Sufyan saying that, "My people, they are diseased. My people, they have become diseased." And this is the reality of Iman. It makes allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ and Allah Azza wa Jal. Now Abu Amir, he had a very famous son. Everybody knows this. His son's name was Handala. His son's name was Handala, the one who was washed by the Malaika. Handala was the one who was washed by the Malaika. This was Abu Amir's son. So the Quraysh, they begin their preparations. The women, they're there as well. They're enticing the men with bed and promises, and they're singing that if you lose and come back, you're basically not going to get anything from us. So the women are there. They're there to encourage the men. They have their series of songs and dancing. They're cheerleaders. So as with all battles that take place, the first the custom of battle is mubaraza, which is the champions of both sides coming into the middle of the battlefield and calling out to one another. They call out to one another, "Hal min mubaris?" Is there anyone out there who is brave enough to combat me one-on-one? So the mubaraza takes place between Talha ibn Abi Talha, and he says, "Hal min mubaris?" Who's there? Who's going to come and face me? So Ali ibn Abi Talib, he stands up and he says that, "I will." So Talha, he's wearing full body armor. So even the hands, are just in complete armor. Ali radiallahu anh, he has nothing. So they both meet in the middle of the battlefield, and Talha, he swung. So Ali radiallahu anh, immediately, he takes the full blow of the sword on the shield, and immediately at lightning speed, Ali radiallahu anh, he hits back. And this was just mastery in the skill of Ali radiallahu anh. And since Talha's entire body is covered in armor, what does Ali do? He aims at the legs with such force that the leg is completely chopped off. So he aims at the leg, and the leg is completely chopped off. Now Talha, he collapses. He collapses. He falls back. And his aura is showing. His aura is showing. His tahban becomes undone. His aura is showing. So Ali radiallahu anh, he comes to strike a final blow. And Talha, he begs Ali that, I beg you by the rights of kinship, don't kill me. They are third cousins. Ali radiallahu anh and Talha, they are third cousins. So Banu Abd Manaf and Banu Abdud Dar, they're brothers. Abd Munaf and Abdud Dar, they are brothers. So they go back three generations. So they're third cousins. Ali radiallahu anh and Talha, they're third cousins. So Talha is there, and he says to Ali radiallahu anh, I beg you by the rights of kinship, don't kill me. So Ali radiallahu anh, when he hears this, he gets embarrassed. He lowers the sword and he walks back. The Sahaba said that, why didn't you kill him? And Ali radiallahu anh said that, I felt embarrassed. And he begged me by the ties of kinship. He begged me by the ties of kinship. So Ali radiallahu anh, he felt this dignity that there's a way to fight and kill someone. And this is the way of a true noble warrior. His enemy is in a pitiful state, and he's begging. His enemy is in a pitiful state. He has his leg cut off, and he's begging his opponent that, I beg you by the rights of kinship, don't kill me. So Ali radiallahu anh, he left, and this is why he never killed him. Now here we have a big gap, because we have hardly any details of the initial assault. We just have a few tidbits. All that we know is that the Muslims, they charged after Ali radiallahu anh's victory. So Ali radiallahu anh, that was basically a win in that the Battle of Champions, that was a win. And the Muslims charged immediately after that. And the mushrikun, they could not sustain the assault, right? Despite the army being well armored, armed to the teeth, they could not take control. And what happened was that the women of the Quraysh, they were forced to flee, which shows that the initial attack of the Muslims was absolutely devastating. And why is this? Because the women, remember, they're stationed at the very end, right behind the army. So it shows that the Muslims had the upper hand. And this again shows the military strategy of the Prophet ﷺ. He was a great military strategist. And this is from Allah. This is from Allah, that he's never had any training in battle, but he maximizes the effectiveness of 700 against 3,000. Now, this small area of land was being used by the Muslims very effectively. So they charged forward like a just bullet going through weak layers of the Quraysh. And we also know that regarding the initial assault, the flag of the Quraysh was given to the sub-tribe of Banu Abd Dar, where Talha was from, the one who fought Ali radiallahu anh moments ago. So it was the custom of the Quraysh that the Banu Abd Dar always held the flag, meaning they were the standard bearers. They were the standard bearers. Now in the Battle of Badr, for those who recall, the same tribe, Banu Abd Dar, had it. Right? Mus'ab bin Umayr, he was also from Banu Abd Dar, and he was the standard bearer for the Muslims. And this is where he lost his, he became a martyr. Mus'ab bin Umayr became a martyr in the Battle of Uhud. So if you recall, in the Battle of Badr, they had it, the same tribe had it, but when the army fled, when the flag bearer was the first to run away. So the flag bearer, the one who was carrying the standard, he ran away first, so the rest of the army, it fled during the Battle of Badr. So now Abu Sufyan, before Uhud begins, before the battle begins, he reminds them of what happened at Badr. that you turned your backs and fled. Abu Sufyan was not there, but he found out. So he said, you turned your backs and fled, and you saw what happened to us. So he's basically taunting them. He's taunting them before the Battle of Uhud, that, if you can't take care of it, we'll give it to someone else. If you can't take care of this flag, we'll give the flag to someone else. You don't deserve it. So he's taunting them. The flag is the symbol of the army. If it stands, the army stands. If it falls, the army falls. Now take the flag with the rights it deserves, or give up and hand it to us. So Abu Sufyan, this is psychology. The Banu Umayyah, they were very famous when it came to arousing people. So this is the psychology of Abu Sufyan. And he taunts them, and all of the Banu Abdiddar, they make an extreme pact, and they say that you will see what we will do with this flag. As long as one of us remains, this flag will stay up no matter what. And that is exactly what happened. The flag was always up. But one by one, all 10 of the Banu Abdiddar, they were killed, one after the other. The first was Talha, who was injured by Ali radiallahu anh. One by one, most of them were killed by Hamza radiallahu anh. And because you're handicapped, if a person, it's difficult to fight with a standard in one hand and a sword in another. So you're basically handicapped. It's awkward to fight that way. So Hamza radiallahu anh, he exploited this, and eventually the flag, it falls. And this truly shows how effective the initial assault was. Most of the people, most of the kuffar, they were killed at the hands of Hamza, Ali radiallahu anh, and Abu Dujana. They were just whirlwinds of death. Hamza radiallahu anh was a whirlwind of death. It comes that when he would fight in battle, when he and Ali radiallahu anh would fight in battle, they would fight as if they had multiple swords. That's how quick they were in battle. So Abu Dujana, with the flag on the ground, and once the standard falls on the ground, this is the symbolic end of the army, that this is it. Now you have to give up. So this is one of the chaos that happened. I would say that the assumption was that the Muslims won, because the initial assault was so devastating that the Muslims who were in the rear guard, the archers who were watching, they saw that the Muslims were winning. They saw the spoils of war, and this is what prompted them to leave their station and to leave their post. Abu Dujana, he fought a fearsome battle. So Zubair bin Awwam, I said that he was a son of Safiya, the aunt of the Prophet ﷺ, Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib. So he narrates this hadith. When the Prophet ﷺ offered his sword, and I said, I want it, right? And he gave it to Abu Dujana, I felt something in my heart. Because Zubair bin Awwam, he's the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's thinking, why didn't the Prophet of Allah give it to me? I'm his cousin. I'm related to him. My mom is his aunt. So Zubair bin Awwam said that I decided to follow Abu Dujana. I wanted to see that, why did the Prophet of Allah give him the sword? So Abu Dujana, Zubair bin Awwam said that Abu Dujana did not meet a single person on that battlefield except he didn't kill him with the sword by the haqq of that sword. So Abu Dujana was just, on that day, he was, again, whirlwind of death. And there's a story, it's a very interesting story of there was a famous sword by the name of Samsama, famous sword by the name of Samsama. And Umar radiallahu anh, he heard of this sword. The sword, the wielder of the sword was Amr ibn Madi Karib. Amr ibn Madi Karib, very famous Sahabi, very famous companion. So Umar radiallahu anh, he heard great exploits of this sword Samsama. So Amr ibn Madi Karib, he receives a letter from Umar radiallahu anh that, no, I want to see this sword. What's so good about it? Why is it so famous? So Amr ibn Madi Karib, he sent the sword to Umar radiallahu anh. And Umar radiallahu anh, he checked out the sword, he looked at it, and he found that, the sword is nothing special. There's nothing special about the sword. So he sent a letter back to Amr ibn Madi Karib that, there's nothing special. I've heard amazing exploits. I've heard such amazing things about this sword, but it's a normal sword. So Amr ibn Madi Karib, he gave a very peculiar response. He said that, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, that, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, You asked for the sword. You never asked for the one who wields the sword. Meaning that there's nothing special about the sword. There's nothing special about the sword. What's special is the one who is wielding and holding that sword, which is me. I'm the one who is holding that sword, and that's what's special. So it's not the sword that makes the person. It's the man that makes the sword. So Abu Dujana, he made that sword, and he fulfilled the haqq of that sword. And there was one person causing much havoc amongst the Muslims. I'm sorry, amongst the non-Muslims. There was one person who was causing havoc in the Muslim army. So I made dua to Allah. Zubair bin Awwam is narrating the hadith that let Abu Dujana meet him. Let Abu Dujana meet him, because this man was causing a lot of havoc and he was attacking the Muslims with a lot of vigor. So Abu Dujana met him in battle, and Abu Dujana cut him down. Abu Dujana got rid of him, cut him down completely. Ibn Ishaq also mentions Abu Dujana narrating that I saw someone encouraging the Quraysh with all the encouragements imaginable. So I went to him, raised my sword to strike, but I heard walwalat, the wailing of a woman, and I felt embarrassed to dishonor the sword of the Prophet ﷺ by using it on a woman. So this woman, right, was Hind, the wife of Abu Sufyan. So he spared her. Right? Abu Dujana spared her, and because this is a woman, and in Islam, jihad is very controlled. Fighting is very controlled. You don't kill women. You don't kill children. You don't kill people who are in a pathetic state, who are asking you to and imploring you to not kill them, to protect them. So jihad is very controlled. We're still being modified. That just because fighting is allowed, but even in that jihad, there's a lot of modifications from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a lot of control. And if a person does not control himself in that time, then he is disobeying the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we know that Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, he fought with extreme valor, and Ibn Ishaq has a list of who he killed, and in that list, Hamza is of those who killed many of the Quraysh, along with Ali radiallahu anh and Abu Dujana. Now we conclude with a narration of Bukhari that when we fought them at Uhud, and we made that initial charge, they turned and they fled. So the Muslim army, they cut through the sufuf. And this is why sufuf are very important. Rows are very important. So the Muslim army, it cut through the sufuf. It cut through the Qurashi rows. And that assault was so successful that I saw with my own eyes the legs of the women of the Quraysh running up the mountains, and I could see their ankle bracelets that they had on. I could see them. And the women, they're defenseless. They themselves do not have their men to protect them. So the women, they're all the way in the back. Just imagine that the charge was so successful that they broke through all of the rows, and now the women, they have no men to protect them, so they're running away. So he says that I remember seeing Hind running all the way up to the mountain, that the wife Abu Sufyan, she's running all the way up to the mountain. And from this we can see how devastating the initial assault of the Muslim army was. The Muslims broke through the Quraysh, forced them all to turn back and flee, and they had the upper hand at first. And this is what caused the chaos. And of course, what is to follow is a different story and a change of tide, that the Muslims who were at the back, the archers who were protecting the mountain pass, they left their post. And because they saw this victory and the spoils of war being collected, so they left their post and they disobeyed a direct order of the Prophet ﷺ. And inshallah, we will go over that next week. Jazakumullah khairan. Are there any questions? If there are any questions, just write it on the side. No questions? Handala. Yeah, Handala. So the question is, what's the story of the man being washed by the Malaika? So this is Handala, the son of Abu Amir al-Rahib. So inshallah we'll come to that. We'll come to that where he was washed by the Malaika. Inshallah, I think next week we will be covering that, or possibly the week after, inshallah. But his story was, yes, he met his he became a martyr in the battle of Uhud. Handala became a martyr in the battle of Uhud, and what happened was that he had gotten married. He had gotten married, and he heard that the battle of Uhud is about to take place. So he rushed to the battlefield, and he had just gotten married. He had spent time with his wife. He got to the battlefield. He had to take the ghusl of impurity, and he met his end at the battle of Uhud. And as a result of not taking the ghusl of impurity, the ghusl of purity, I mean, the Prophet ﷺ remarked that the malaika, they bathed him and they washed him. So this is the background. So he was called Ghasilul Malaika. Handala was known as Ghasilul Malaika, the one who was bathed by the Malaika, by the angels. Are there any other questions? Inshallah, tomorrow we will have in the evening we'll have a question and answer session. So it'll be about half hour, depending on what kind of questions are posed, what kind of questions are asked. But inshallah, we will have a question and answer session tomorrow evening between 8 to 8:30. Yes. So some of the archers. The question is, some of the archers did stay on the hill. Do we know who they are? Yes, we do have names. We do have names of those archers and who they are. And this is when there was some argument amongst the archers themselves that we have to stay at the post Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam assigned us, so we're not going to move from here. However, majority of the archers, they left their post and they started collecting the booty and the spoils of war, and this is what led to the result, the overall outcome of the Battle of Uhud. The question is that where was the Prophet ﷺ during this part of the war? Also, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. Good question. The Prophet ﷺ during this time, he was always at the forefront. In battle, he was always at the forefront. Any battle that the Prophet of Allah participated, he was also fighting. And it comes in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ was always fighting. And he never killed anyone, but he would parry the blows. And Umar radiallahu anh and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh would always be beside him. These were the wazirs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they were always beside the Prophet of Allah. So during the time when the Quraysh, when they after the initial assault, and the Quraysh, they gathered themselves, they launched their own offensive. And this was the time that the Prophet ﷺ, he was right in the middle of it, and parrying their blows. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anh and Umar radiallahu anh, they were just fighting with a furiosity. Uthman radiallahu anh, same thing. That Uthman radiallahu anh, he was also with the initial the group that was surrounding the Prophet ﷺ. So you have like Talha bin Ubaidullah, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali radiallahu anh was somewhere in the front. But you basically have the Ashara Mubashara, the 10 who were guaranteed paradise. They would always fight around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As a matter of fact, it does come in Seerah that the Prophet of Allah would often, because of his strength and because of how strong he was, the Sahaba, when they would get tired, they would seek protection behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he was an expert swordsman. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught him, and he was an expert swordsman. He never killed anyone, but he did parry everyone's blows. He did parry everyone's swords. So the Sahaba, they would whenever they would get tired, they would go behind the Prophet of Allah, rest up, and then they would go back into the field. But yes, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, Umar radiallahu anh, they would always be with the Prophet, and the Prophet himself would be at the forefront in battle. He was not a person who would stay at the end. He was not from. He never. He was always in the vanguard, not rear guard. Are there any other questions? So another thing is that I've always been against Facebook, and wherever I have done imamat in Arizona, in Michigan, the masjid, the board members, they would always encourage me that you need to make a Facebook account, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. So finally, with whatever is happening, and now I have no choice. So I did make a Facebook account with. So I usually put quite a bit of stuff over there. So the Facebook account is Mufti Naif Abbas Patel. You could take a look at it. There's a lot of some of it is in Arabic. It's for people who understand Arabic, but there's a lot of Urdu stuff there. I like Urdu poetry. For those who know me, I do like Urdu poetry. I put a lot of English stuff over there as well. So take a look, inshallah, and hopefully it is of benefit. No, they didn't. So the question is, did all 10 promised paradise become? No, they didn't. Because you still have Abu Bakr, Umar radiallahu anh, Ali radiallahu anh, Uthman, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, Abdurrahman bin Auf, Talha bin Ubaidillah, Zubair bin Awwam, Sa'id bin Zayd. These were all Ashara Mubashara, and they lived through the caliphate of Abu Bakr, Umar. So no, they didn't become shaheed. Yeah. Any other questions before we break? Okay, so I'm going to assume that question time is over. And Jazakallah khairan. Everyone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Dr. Seb, you could always go to Facebook and check it out over there. There's I think I put some on today. I don't recall, but I did put it on. Yeah. Inshallah, make dua for the ummah. Keep the ummah in dua. Keep in your prayers those physicians, everybody who is in the healthcare industry, who are working to serve humanity. This is the time that we should make dua for them and remember them in our pious duas. We should, there should be a deep and heartfelt thank you to all healthcare workers in whatever capacity, because they're all committed to fighting this pandemic. They're fighting for us. May all of them be safe and be recognized for their dedication and unselflessness. We should thank them all and make dua for them as much as possible. Jazakallah khairan, inshallah. It's almost time for Isha. Tomorrow we'll have a question and answer session. Whatever questions you have, it's going to be half an hour. Just put your questions on Facebook, and I can try to answer them after doing a little bit of research. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.